Good day and welcome to Globaleye and to our latest edition of Tony Talks. Now, our regular viewers will be familiar with hearing my esteemed colleague Tony Ashton asking the questions and myself answering those questions. Well, today we've decided to reverse the format. I'm going to ask the questions and Tony will give you his considered views. So, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Tony Ashton, who is a Senior Wealth Manager at Globaleye. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay. So, Tony, stock markets in the US seem to be finding new reasons to hit record highs. Has there been anything in particular behind that?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that question, Simon, because, of course, last week, very good jobs data out of the US. US unemployment rate 4.7%, so that's effectively full employment. So obviously good news, good for the markets. And of course on Sunday, the French presidential election, pretty much as expected, Emmanuel Macron won, but the percentage that he won by was probably greater than most people did expect. So he won by 66%. Against Marine Le Pen's 34%. So he's seen very much as the establishment candidate, and the markets were very cheered by that yesterday.
So it appeared that we've had something of a relief rally in the markets. We've had a lot of political news with the elections and with some of the regional tensions around the world. Are we expecting to see any more political movements that could influence the markets?
Well, I mean, of course we've got the big one in the UK, the big general election coming on June the 8th. Pretty much looks as though Theresa May's Conservative government will win it, but of course we never know. I mean, nobody, stranger things have happened. For example, the US presidential election, of course. So we've got that coming up. We've got elections also in Germany, but at the moment, I think markets are, quite relieved that Macron was elected, and maybe that's, a sign of things to come. Certainly in Europe.
Okay. Turning back to the United States. How should the markets be feeling about President Trump at the moment?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, he's just gone through the first 100-day barrier, and people were saying, well, what has he actually achieved? And and I think the consensus was, well, really not that much, really, in the first 100 days. And there we go. Last week, finally, he gets a victory, although it may only be a sort of half victory in terms of his repeal and replace Obamacare. And obviously, that needs to go to Congress for ratification. And I'm sure it'll be amended quite significantly down the line, but at least he's starting to get legislation through, and that bodes well for his future intentions with regards to things like reducing the rate of corporate and personal income tax. He's talking about a corporate tax rate of 15%. So obviously the markets like that, and I think we started to see that being reflected yesterday.
The oil price has been looking a little bit more shaky in the last week or so. Has there been anything particular behind the movements that we've seen?
Well, what we saw last week was Libya, come back on full production, 700,000 barrels a day, and the oil rig count increased in the United States. Now, the problem now, OPEC's come out and they're now talking about extending the output cuts into 2018. The problem that they have, though, is that OPEC only accounts for 35% of global oil output. It's not like the 1970s when whatever OPEC said, the rest of the world had to listen to. And now you've got big production coming out of the United States, in particular the shale production, and they're in a bit of a catch-22 because when they get to around the $50 a barrel level, then it becomes economical for the US shale producers to start pumping out oil again. Now, in the past, there was a lead time of a couple of years to do that. Now we're talking weeks, so they can very quickly switch on and switch off production. So it's really difficult to see how influential the OPEC cuts will actually be.
But even so, Tony, is there still something meaningful that OPEC can do to influence the oil price?
Well, I mean, all they can do is what they're actually trying to do at the moment. They're talking about, Saudi Arabia and Russia are talking about extending the output cuts into 2018. And that's really the only sort of tool they have in their toolkit, really, to try and regulate the price. But as I said earlier, they're not as influential as they used to be. Only 35% of global oil production is from the OPEC producers. So not as significant as it used to be.
Okay, well, thank you, Tony, for those views, and thank you, everyone, for your attention. We look forward to talking to you again soon.